So our meetup time was
2:30
at the Imperial McDonald's with a private guided tour. So it wasn't the big city tour. It was another one that was offered through the Airbnb. And I synced up to it partly because it was a smaller tour. Sometimes the big city tours, which are good, but sometimes there are more people and you feel more like a little guppy in that. And so this was supposed to be a little more intimate setting, and it was. Smaller group, local guy who studied history and was really good at it, and had worked for the big tour companies and broke off, and him and his wife had formed a smaller tour. And so this was set to be a more intimate tour.
He had a lot of history, took us to many different places. One of the highlights on the tour was the train station Sao Bento. And
Beautiful.
Inside the station is this amazing mural, again made up with blue tiles, and also at the top were tiles or paintings that were in color instead of the blue tile. Just tells the story of the evolution of Portugal's history.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. A must see. I mean, that's one of those must sees in Porto.
Yeah, and unfortunately, one side was covered up in tarp because it was under construction, so we didn't get to have the full experience, which is unfortunate. So definitely something to do next time we go back.
And then we wandered up the road to the cathedral, right?
Yeah, the Porto. We went up to the Porto Cathedral and the Bishop's Quarters.
Bishop's Quarters.
Yeah, and that was on top of the hill overlooking, again, the river and surrounding areas.
So one of the interesting things about Porto is it's a city that never had any castles. This is not a kingdom, it was more of the church, and the bishop ruled this area. And so the bishop's cathedral was built to look something like a castle.
Yeah, it had like some spiky
Fences.
fences.
Yeah. On top of the hillside, built to look like a castle, but it wasn't a castle, but it was a way that the church could protect that region.
Mm-hmm. And we recommend this tour. There were only 5 total people in the tour, and the 6th including the tour guide. So we recommend it. We'll put his link down below in the comment, in the description.
Yep, well worth it, all worth it.
And then we crossed over the bridge to Gaia, which is the other city, which is technically bigger than Porto in terms of population. And that's where they make all of the port wines across the river, the Douro River. And we crossed it through the Ponte de Luis bridge, which is another designed by a Gustave Eiffel student.
Yep.
So it had that similar look as well.
And it was a double-decker, triple-decker
Double-decker.
bridge.
The lower deck is for cars and pedestrians, and then the upper deck was for their train
and pedestrians.
pedestrians. Yeah.
And we crossed over onto the lower deck, and it was under construction. So we didn't get to see the view that we were wanting to see.
Which is
and
good.
It was loud and narrow because we were in kind of a, not a tube, but an area with lots of tarps around us.
Scaffolding
And all that. Clearly under construction. And
very scary. Like you could see the water. Once we got out of the tarped area, you could see the water, and that was like, don't want to go there. And then our first winery was Quevedo.
Oh yeah, Quevedo, where we got to get a bottle of port wine, and we had 3 different flavors. We had a
No, this one we only had the rosé
yeah.
tasting in this one.
So we had the rosé,
Which is
which I don't normally like rosés, but this was a rosé port, which I really enjoyed, and it had a nice bouquet, nice flavor. And port is an aperitivo. It's something to be consumed before dinner, after dinner. Not typically something consumed with dinner, with a meal. You can consume it with light snacks, nuts and things like that, because it's a fortified wine. So it's got brandy or a higher alcohol in it to fortify it. And the reason why they fortified wine is so they could ship it overseas. So this was all about port wine. Came into fashion in the early explorer days of Portugal. They were trying to ship wine onto the boats. They couldn't keep a traditional wine for that length of time, and so they fortified it with a higher level of alcohol to make it more stable. So that's the reason why port wine was born, and it works really well as an aperitivo. If you're feeling a little full, you're feeling a little not quite ready to eat, a little port cleanses the palate, opens up the stomach, and allows you to eat. And then after a meal, port is a great way to finish a meal. And we discovered the 3 different kinds of ports. The 3 different kinds of ports that we ended up trying. So you've got a rosé, a tawny, and a ruby. Those are the 3 types of ports. And rosé is fairly new. That's in the early 2000s that the government authority that oversees the port wines, can't think of the name for it, but allowed it. So not every port winery does a rosé. So as we walked along in the Gaia, along the
Largo Santa Men,
which was a beautiful walking tour right next to the Douro, and you could see the old boats that they used to haul the wine casks in. So those are along there. They don't use those now. It's pretty much shipped by rail.
Yeah, and we were lucky this time around. We did get a beautiful golden sunset.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
And we were on the other side. We were in Gaia, so we could see the sun, the setting sun hit Porto. It was just absolutely gorgeous.
Gorgeous, breathtaking view. And then the weather was perfect. We were anticipating a little bit of rain, so we had our raincoat and umbrella. We did get a few sprinkles here and there, but nothing of any sort to ruin that. And we were just lucky on that one.
Yeah. And then the second winery that we went to was Vasquez de Carvalho, and that's a fairly new one too. They've been making port, or they've been selling port to other companies, wineries, but they started their own a few years ago. And when they first opened their doors, the first person to walk in was somebody that worked for Steve Reeves. Is it? Rick Steves.
Rick Steves.
Somebody that worked for Rick Steves. Oops. Anyway, and this one they gave us the 3 tastes, all delicious.
Oh yeah,
delicious.
Really good. And he enjoys the port wines, and those we're accustomed to a little pour of a port. Those were pours.
Yeah, they look like regular wine.
Glasses of wine. Loaded glasses of wine. So we had, by the time we were done, we had 4 glasses of port, 4 glasses of wine that we needed to walk off.
And that was the end of the tour. And then on the way back, you're free to go wherever you want. And on the way back to Porto, we went up on the top part of the Pont de Luís Bridge. Hello. Yeah.
The rest of it.
He really wanted to eat at a place that overlooked the river, so we ate at Henyao restaurant and bar, which is on top of a hill, and we did have a view of the river. We really wanted to sit outside, but they wouldn't let us sit outside because the previous day a couple insisted on eating outside, and then it started raining, and then so they had to scramble. So that was a mistake that they weren't gonna make again. But the food here is absolutely amazing.
Amazing, like a fantastic meal.
He had a steak, and when his first bite, his eyes rolled into the back of his head.
Oh yeah, that was a good steak. And it had been a week since I'd had a steak or more. I mean, I haven't had a steak in a few weeks actually. So a lot of fish.
Yeah.
So I had, beautiful view. And the weather was unpredictable on that day, so we were kind of prepared for both.
Yeah. So it was a nice ending to our trip in Porto. For me, this trip was amazing. I had a preconceived notion that I would like Porto better than Lisbon for some reason, but that was not the case. It's the total opposite. The vibes of Lisbon resonated with me more. I had the feeling of like I don't want to leave, and he loved Porto a lot more than I did. Porto was beautiful and great, don't get me wrong. I think in comparing the two, I preferred Lisbon internally. For some reasons that I can't articulate, I was drawn more to Lisbon. It's just something that I felt inside, like that. I don't know. It's a hard to describe feeling.
And I really enjoyed Porto, but trying to think of what makes it majestic. Porto, the view a little more quaint. Porto is a quarter the size of Lisbon. Lisbon is a big city. But I enjoyed Porto. I liked Lisbon, but for me, I fell in love with Porto.
And Lisbon is a very international city. It's known for that, where a lot of folks from all over the world might come to. Either they live there permanently or stay there for an extended period of time. And, we saw that firsthand.
Porto seems to be Porto's an old city, but a younger tourism city.
Yeah, it came into its own, I guess, fairly recently.
But a couple of things that really kind of hit me. We had anxiety about going over to Portugal about the language. Had lots of Spanish, so I was trying to apply the basics of Spanish to Portuguese, which they have a lot of similarities. They're basically both Latin-based. They share a lot of words. The pronunciations are completely different. So when you hear it, it's different. When you see it, it's slightly different.
Yeah, even there's a big difference in Brazilian Portuguese and European Portuguese.
And I discovered that, so one of the things I was trying to do was get a travel book, and I regret that I didn't get enough in advance an English to Portuguese, European Portuguese book on phrases. Like, how to ask for the bathroom, how to ask for a drink, how to ask for the check, how to ask for those kinds of things, because those are functional phrases that you need when you're traveling a country. But going back to the apprehension of language, let that not be a reason to not go to Portugal.
That's one of the things too that my coworker mentioned to me, that you can get away fine. Almost everybody speaks English, but don't let that be a crutch though. Really do apply yourself and learn some of the more basic phrases, and they'll appreciate that, but they have no problem speaking English. And one of the lucky saving graces for me was I was going to practice learning Portuguese through Babbel starting in October, but I never did that. But on the plane, they had these lessons, practice Portuguese, and I was able to get some basic phrases in that way. So I was happy that the flight provided us for us. And also they had shows about the people of Lisbon, a bunch of like shows of the
Top
different
things
cities.
to see in each city.
Yeah. So that was
Get
great.
around, top food.
So I did like TAP Airlines based
thumbs
on
up.
that. Then
Thumbs up.
super friendly flight crews. I hate airplane flying, especially for this long of journey. We had no problems with TAP.
No, we had plenty of leg room. We did get the reclining seats.
Yeah, it's just expensive.
We paid more for the reclining seats. I can't imagine going 8-10 hours without a reclining seat. I didn't really look to see whether there were seats that weren't reclining.
So thanks for rolling with us in Portugal. We hope you enjoyed the time. If you want to roll with us again, please feel free to hit that subscribe button as well as the bell icon for notifications and that like button as well.
Thank you very much for enjoying your time with us as we enjoyed our time in Portugal.
Obrigado.
Obrigado.
We'll roll with you next time.